So there is another way to get to Mars, and NASA's been working on this technology, as Tony said, since 1947.
It was before NASA even.
Yeah, before NASA even existed, it was working on. Patrick?
Okay. I think I've seen this movie before. Why don't we go to the next slide? And
Ed Wood, I know.
yes. All right. That image also implied flying saucers, but this is the latest development from NASA. It's a vehicle that looks like a saucer, and it's like a frisbee, but it's really designed to evaluate future landing technologies on future landing technologies and missions to Mars. So it's designed to re-enter the Martian atmosphere and deliver payloads of greater mass than, say, the Curiosity rover. So, and this is how it was viewed in the Los Angeles Times as a flying saucer. So basically, this is a vehicle that NASA wanted to test flight, and in order to test flight its characteristics for going through the Martian atmosphere, obviously they can't send it to Mars. So the next best thing they could do would be to take this vehicle on a test flight. And the vehicle itself is called the Low Density Supersonic Decelerator. And if we go to the next slide, we can see what NASA did to test flight this vehicle. They basically took it aloft on a balloon up to 119,000 feet. And then with that rocket booster, they boosted up to 180,000 feet. And there at that altitude, the air density is equivalent to the air density of the Martian atmosphere, at which point they wanted to test the re-entry of this vehicle. And you see there's also a parachute they wanted to test. And also on the edge of the vehicle, there's something called a supersonic inflatable decelerator that actually inflates out and slows down the vehicle even further. At the top point where the rocket is, when the rocket stops firing, the vehicle moves just about 4 times the speed of sound, and the goal is to decelerate it down to almost 0 before it splashes down in the ocean. On June 28th, the vehicle was flight tested, and we're going to take a look at the video that was shot on board a camera.
On June 28th, NASA's Low-Density Supersonic Decelerator project conducted the first shakeout flight of a new way of testing technologies that will one day be used to land heavier, more massive payloads on the surface of Mars. We used a large 34 million cubic foot scientific balloon to hoist a 7,000-pound test vehicle to an altitude of 120,000 feet. The test vehicle was then released from the balloon, spun up for stability, and a large solid rocket motor accelerated to over 4 times the speed of sound and an altitude of 180,000 feet, a condition very similar to the conditions it would see at Mars. Once we reached the correct speed and altitude, we despun the vehicle.
Please.
And then we got a chance to test our new supersonic inflatable decelerator. The camera lens covers deploy. We see that inflated very uniformly without disturbing the vehicle too much. And now we're seeing previously unreleased high-definition, high-resolution, and high-speed video taken during the test. We used the supersonic inflatable decelerator to slow us to something closer to 2.5 times the speed of sound. We use a balloon to help deploy the new supersonic parachute. The balloon is shot out the back of the vehicle at over 200 feet per second, and then we cut the balloon free and it begins to pull the parachute off the back of the vehicle. As the parachute begins to inflate, we see one of the surprising aspects of this test, which is the early onset of tears in the parachute. We see where those tears began, how they propagated, and otherwise how the parachute behaved as it began trying to inflate behind this very blunt object moving 2.5 times the speed of sound, punching a hole in the atmosphere and creating an extremely turbulent, chaotic environment for the parachute to exist in. We now have a data set that we will use to prepare for 2 more tests beginning in June of 2015.
I would really have loved to have been in the room when they decided what parachute to use. Like, which one? I don't know. Just throw it on there and see how it works.
Well, no, they've got. I mean, I think the parachute, the parachute testing for the Mars landings is a huge deal.
Oh, it is. It's a big
so
deal.
I'm sure they must have given. You probably know they must have given a huge lot of thought about which parachute to use, or do you know? Did they just sort of use what worked on Mars last time?
They were glad to have a lesson learned.
Yeah. Well said. So Patrick.
Anyway, from the ground, here you see there's the balloon, and when the rocket fired, the test vehicle is right above there. And we're going to see a bunch of recovery pictures. Here it is, after it splashed down in the water. There's
some mermaids
two
going through
U.S. Navy personnel coming to bring it to
US
the boat
Navy
over
mermaids.
there.